If you want, I can turn it off. I don't care.
All right, so whoops. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, okay. Great, so again, my name's Maureen Walker. I'm here with Orla and Aaron, and we're just so excited to have you all here with us. So thank you so much for joining. So I'm just going to kind of start off with just a little bit of an explanation of SHIP for those who might not be as familiar. So we are a nonprofit. We've been around for about 7 years now. So SHIP stands for the Student Homelessness Initiative Partnership. And so really we kind of exist at this intersectionality of education and housing. So we have a few different programs in SHIP. So we have kind of what was the first program is really the basic needs program. And so that's working with any student in the Frederick County Public School System who has been identified as McKinney-Vento, which is the federal law that identifies homeless students. The basic needs program is able to work with them to identify anything that they might need and be able to get that for those young students. So that could be clothing, it could be hotel placement sometimes. That's been a huge part of that program since COVID started. So really any sort of basic needs that student might need. We also have our New Horizons program, which is the high school age program. And so we have 2 full-time youth case managers that work in 6 different high schools throughout Frederick County. And so they're providing long-term case management for those young students in high school to make sure that they're on track to graduate. Because studies have shown and research has shown that for a student who's been experiencing homelessness, to receive their high school diploma is a major intervention for that young person to not return into homelessness into their adulthood. We also have our Youth Action Board, which is a group of youth and young adults with lived experience of homelessness that are working kind of within the organization to better our organization and make it more youth-centric. And then they also work in advocacy throughout the community. So they've worked with leadership at FCPS, and have connected with other national youth leaders to be able to kind of develop and create more sustainability in their advocacy efforts. And then of course we have our Thrive Host Home program, which is obviously why we are here today. So I'm just going to start off with talking about what is a host home. So host homes are kind of short-term interventions for young people who are experiencing homelessness for any variety of reasons. So we know that, poverty and then structural oppression and racism are kind of at the crux of youth homelessness. We know that we don't have access to affordable housing. In Frederick County, that's especially true. A lot of our young people might be fleeing their homes from family conflict, addiction at the home. We also have a lot of young people, and nationally, young people who identify as LGBTQIA+ are overrepresented when we're looking at youth homelessness. So there's really a variety of reasons why that young person might be experiencing homelessness. I did mention, but also involvement in other systems like the juvenile justice system or the foster care system. A lot of those young people exit those programs or exit those systems and go right into homelessness. So really the goal of a host home is to provide a safe, temporary, and welcoming space for that young person where they're able to kind of refocus and focus on goals to get them out of homelessness. And host homes are currently used in various communities and cities across North America. It's a really flexible model, so it can work well in more urban areas and also more rural areas. And the reason I'm so grateful for you all to be here is because it's a very community-based program. So we're really looking at kind of recreating home environments for our young people. So we're kind of trying to stray away from that institutional feeling that a lot of our transitional housing models have. We're really looking at the resources that already exist. We have incredible people in our community who have extra space in their homes. And what we're asking is for those folks to be willing to open up their homes to house this young person so they're able to exit out of homelessness. So we're kind of using these existing resources to safely house our youth. And kind of at the central of all of this is our belief in youth choice. So we believe that the young person has the right to determination, dignity, and respect. We uphold the values of inclusivity, affirming and compassionate care, and a commitment to be trauma informed, and we ask that our hosts do the same. And Orlin will talk a little bit more about the youth experience later on, but we do centralize our young people in all decision making. So we want them to be part of identifying the host family that they feel would be the best fit and identifying the goals that they want to work towards, with the support of us and the hosts as well. So this is kind of just a graphic to explain a little bit about what our process looks like. So again, we are community-based, so kind of the first step is just recruiting hosts who have a spare bedroom or private space in their home. From there, I work with any hosts or potential hosts who have applied, and I interview them. We do background checks on anybody over the age of 18 in the home, and we also do reference checks for our host families as well, because we want to make sure that they are a good fit and would be able to provide safe and affirming housing for our young people. We also do a home visit during that, and that has primarily been virtual over the last year, although our staff is vaccinated now, and I know a lot of other vaccinations are kind of ramping up, which is great. So we can kind of, if someone feels comfortable with in person, we can always arrange that too. And then on the other end, we are working with 16 to 20-year-old or 22-year-olds, excuse me. And so we have, it's a referral process for the young person to be identified. And so, you know, we are identifying these young people who are unaccompanied. So that means that they're on their own. They're not under the care of a guardian or parents. And then we're also working with 16 to 22-year-olds who are open to working with a case manager and also developing housing, educational, and employment goals. And then what's not included on here is also would be able to commit to any sort of house boundaries that are decided between the families and the young people. So we typically ask our host to commit to house a young person for about 3 to 6 months. Although, you know, sometimes we're working with 16-year-olds sometimes, and after my cat has joined, so he might make an appearance, but so we're typically, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but we're typically asking for about 3 to 6 months, but in some situations we do need a little bit longer. We oftentimes would know that up front if we are working with a 16-year-old who maybe isn't fully documented and might not be able to work as consistently or even rent a space after they exit the program. And so those would be conversations we would have with the host family up front. We let the host kind of determine what sort of time frame they're more comfortable with. If they're more comfortable with a shorter amount of time, we wouldn't want to put somebody in that would potentially need longer than that 6 months. During that time period, we are engaged. We ask that the host engage in regular check-ins with myself and then with Orlin at times, and he's doing regular check-ins with the youth, and then also while receiving supports. And so we do give a stipend for our host families. So for every young person that you house, each month it's $375. We do ask that you provide food for that young person while they're with you. The young people also receive a stipend, and they receive case management supports. And then, you know, we kind of as a program are working with other programs throughout the country to just become better. There's always space for learning. And so we engage in different conversations with other host home providers, engage in different trainings, conferences, whatever's available to us. And if there are things that are applicable to host families, we would share that as well. And then once that young person exits the home, we do ask our host families to just participate in an exit interview. We want to learn from your experience. We want to learn from what we did well, what we could have done better, because again, you know, we are always learning, and we want to learn from folks with lived experience. What are our expectations for our host families? So the most basic of them is just to provide that private room or space for that young person. We want that space to be welcoming, stable, and secure, while that young person's rights, privacy, and culture are respected. We do ask that our hosts attend and participate in trainings, and then also regular check-ins with myself. We are not asking our hosts to parent our young people. We're working with older teens, young adults, and sometimes they have contentious relationships with their biological parents. So we're not asking for that to be replicated, but we're really asking for, you to be dedicated to providing a supportive relationship with that young person. And so that looks different for all of our young people. And we would help you kind of determine those boundaries and what that might look like. I know I mentioned this before, but we do ask that our hosts provide food for that young person. And that could be grocery shopping with them. That could be just having a few things that they like and can easily grab. That could be inviting them to dinner, whatever that might look like. But we ask that they do have food accessible, especially for our young people who are not in school full time anymore and don't have that guaranteed breakfast lunch. And if that happens to be, even with the stipend, if that's a barrier for anybody, we can kind of have an offline conversation and look at ways to support in that aspect, because we wouldn't want that to be a barrier for anybody becoming a host family. And then depending on where people live, sometimes transportation is also, it's not expected, but we do appreciate when it happens. We have a lot of, I mean, as you know, Frederick is very kind of diverse in its access to public transportation. And we have a lot of host families that are more rural, and we are able to get a Uber gift card for a young person. But if that young person's working downtown, that's $40 one way. And so it's not always fiscally the best option. And so just kind of considering, or depending on where you all live, that would probably be a conversation. For hosts that are downtown, we're able to get, I mean, now the public transportation is free, but we're able to get bus passes. If the student is in school, we work with the school system to get them transportation to and from school. So really this is just in relation to if that young person is working. So I know I mentioned a little bit about trainings before. So we're kind of regrouping and looking what trainings can look like now that we are kind of hopefully coming out of COVID, if more folks are getting vaccinated and more able to be in person, because a full day virtual training is tough to ask of anybody. So currently what we do is we have 2 recorded trainings. So the 2 topics that we're primarily focusing on is trauma and adverse childhood experiences is one. And so we have a mental health specialist who works for the Frederick County Public School System that does that training for us, because we know that homelessness in itself is traumatic or a form of trauma for a lot of our young people. So we want to just make sure that our hosts have an understanding of what trauma might look like, how it might manifest in our young people. Also to kind of debunk some about trauma, because I think, you know, a lot of us carry trauma and you would never know. But we also want to make sure that our hosts are equipped to work with a young person who might have trauma and work not to re-traumatize them. And then the second topic that we focus on, and we've partnered with the Frederick Center, which is the local LGBTQIA support center in Frederick County, to talk about kind of that intersectionality of youth homelessness and those with an LGBTQIA identity. About 40% of young people nationally who are experiencing homelessness identify as LGBTQIA. So we know that that group is overrepresented in our youth. And that's particularly true if we're looking at youth, BIPOC youth, so Black and Indigenous people of color who are also LGBTQIA+. So the Frederick Center kind of has a 101 course to just, you know, talk about different language, talk about, you know, different identities. And then has also been a huge support for any family who's been matched with a young person, particularly those who identify as trans or gender non-conforming or non-binary, to provide some additional support, because all of our hosts so far have been cisgender. So that's kind of, we have those 2 virtual recordings. Our hope is to kind of bring those in person soon, although I don't know what that will look like. And then as a staff, we also undergo our regular trainings, and we are just making sure that we're best able to support you all as host families and also the young people. Again, the hope is kind of down the road to have more options for host families to connect with one another, to talk about, you know, your experiences, to learn from others. So that's a hope. And I feel like every time I go to plan that, I get super busy. So I just apologize up front and hope that in the next couple months, that is an actual reality. So we are regularly checking in with our host families and with our young people. I'm checking in with hosts. We kind of determine what seems realistic for you, but also if things are coming up and we don't have any scheduled check-in, you're always able to call or text or email me. And then same with Orlin. Orlin's doing kind of weekly, if not more often, check-ins with our young people. And then, of course, he'll talk about this a little bit later, but he's really working closely with those young people to develop their short to midterm goals and help them reach them. So we do have a goal that needs to be focused on housing, because the intention is that this is a transitional program and the young person will transition out. And then, of course, education and or career, because we want our young people to be working. We want our young people to be able to graduate or move into the next year, whether they're in college, in a tech program, or in high school. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute. I'm going to share, we did a video with one of our first hosts who hosted a young person who we named Michael in this video, although that is not their real name, to just kind of learn more about their experience. So it's about 5 minutes. I will apologize, the quality of the video itself, we did it kind of early COVID, and it's not super high tech, so I will just apologize, but I do think what she says is important. So I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. And
I've learned a lot. I've been introduced to resources that allowed me to educate myself so that I could support him better, which has given me an education that enriches my life and enriches my understanding. It gave me an opportunity to make a difference. I was feeling the weight and the heaviness of my white privilege, of the abundance of what I have in my life. And being able to do this gave me an outlet to feel as though I was part of a productive and positive outcome. It's been incredibly emotionally rewarding for me. I was able to treat Michael with dignity and respect, allowed him to just open up and be. And I think it's a basic human right that we should all get from the moment we're born, but it's often not the case. My intentions were always to set him up to succeed. My intentions were always to support his emotional well-being as well as his physical well-being. My intention was always to create safe space for him to figure out for himself what he wanted to do. And then as a resource manager somewhat, being there to provide whatever technical support or financial support or just advice, counseling support that he needed to reach those goals. I was scared, I won't lie to you. It was an unknown territory. I have a lot of people living in my house with a lot of different needs and personalities. This was something that I was passionate about. It's not necessarily what everybody else was passionate about. I think what blew me away and made this process so incredibly easy and took fear off the table immediately was the support I got from Thrive. It was all the training, it was the resources, it was the constant presence that all of you showed, Michael and I. It was, I wasn't expecting that. I was really expecting to have Michael move in and then kind of be cut loose. And unless there was a big crisis that I would have to tap into you guys, that he was my kid, so to speak, right, to figure out what to do with. but your presence and your ability and your way of engaging with both of us, I think, have set this up to succeed. It's just been the most, the biggest positive surprise out of all of this. It's going to be more than you ever expected. My experience was incredibly positive, and I feel somewhat easy. And it has everything to do with Michael and who he is and what his situation is. The reward is off the scales. And you just take it one day at a time, and you use the resources, and you reach out to the community, and you reach out to Ship and Thrive. And just know that it makes such a huge difference in a young person's life that whatever the bumps along the way are, it's more than worth it. Michael is an exceptional human being that was in the situation he was in by no fault of his own. It's like he was a young person that had no control and no power over his life. So it's not bad kids, it's great human beings put into a situation where they have no power and they have no rights and they have no respect. Do it. Just do it. Because the chance at doing any harm and taking a homeless youth into your home is minuscule, but the potential of doing good is huge.
Okay, well, I hope you all found that helpful. I'm going to turn it over to Orlin now, who's going to talk more about the youth experience.
All right, hi everyone. All right, so I'm just going to talk about how I work with the youth and how actually we work with the youth. So I just want to first mention that when I first work with a young person, I like to discuss and tell them that they are the major stakeholders in their goals and their lives right now. We are just the minority stakeholders. Their success depends on them, but depends on us working together. So Thrive expects the youth to be active participants during their host day and be committed to taking charge of their own lives. That's exactly what I just said earlier, that it's not just about me saying we should do this X, Y, and Z. It's about us discussing things and working through their goals. We expect youth to enroll a role in working towards some sort of educational goal or employment. Finishing school, getting GED, or even attending college. Thrive expects youth participants to work and save money and to be able to transition out of homelessness. So obviously the end goal is to find more stable housing depending on the youth plan. So what we're trying to do is do like financial readiness or financial literacy workshops with them one-on-one. Youth are expected to maintain a regular communication with the host families and Thrive staff. So obviously, Noreen mentioned that we do sometimes, depending on the goal and the youth, we do twice a week, three times a week, depending on the youth. All right. Host and host home. Potential host homes are asked to fill out a lifestyle questionnaire. So we get the questionnaire from you all, from the host. I show it to the youth because we're trying to find the best fit for the host and the youth. Not every host is a youth match, so you're trying to minimize any type of, as much as possible, any type of red areas that you're trying to eliminate. Youth complete intake paperwork with myself and staff to decide the youth is a good fit. This is to needs assessment, a service plan, even the intake process, and just talking to them before the host and the youth meet. The Thrive team will be determined to whether the potential host and the youth are a good match, and we'll schedule a time for both parties to meet. This is when we, before it was obviously face-to-face, now it's usually sometimes maybe virtual, just to see, and you guys meet and see if you guys, after looking over the questionnaire and talking and interviewing to see if you guys, it would be a good fit for both. Meetings allow the host and the youth to meet with support from the Thrive team, myself, and Maureen. During this meeting, we discussed boundaries, expectations, and to eliminate communication issues. Now, obviously, some things may change. It could be from youth spending the night out, not returning home, or it could be just simple things like, okay, we expect this, and the youth expect this, just to make sure that everything is on paper or everything's in the open, so that we know, again, to avoid any type of red areas or any type of hiccups. We do actually used to do a COVID contracts. We have a basic basic one, but depending on the host, that could be, we can make that more applicable to the host, so everybody will feel safe. So as they say, apply to hosts. If you know anyone that's willing to open their homes to a young person, please feel free to visit the website here. Help us build a network of Thrive friends and family through Thrive. Also, if you know someone that's are interested but are not there yet to open their homes to a young person, they can also sponsor a youth. That's another way you can they can be involved in this process, And it says right here, follow us in fellowship on Facebook, and tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your church members, tell those in the community that you feel would be a good fit. And yeah, thank you so much for your time. Any questions? Do you have any questions at all?
And before we jump into questions, I'm going to stop recording.